The sun was setting behind the rolling hills of Meadowbrook Ranch, casting golden hues over the wooden fences and sprawling fields. The barn stood proudly at the heart of the property, its weathered red paint a testament to years of use. Inside, the air was filled with the familiar sense of hay, leather, and the faint musk of animals. Yet tonight, there was an unusual silence, broken only by the occasional shuffle of hooves. Roscoe, a 5-year-old golden retriever with a soft golden coat and bright, intelligent eyes, padded quietly through the barn's open doors. Roscoe was the ranch's faithful watchdog, loved by all for his gentle nature and boundless energy. But lately, he'd sensed something amiss. In the farthest stall of the barn stood Bella, a 10-year-old dapple-gray mare with a graceful yet melancholic demeanor. Bella had been the pride of Meadowbrook for years, a show horse with countless ribbons to her name. But time had caught up with her. An injury to her hind leg had ended her career, and her once lively spirit had dimmed. She spent her days in the barn, away from the other horses, her solitude a constant reminder of what she'd lost. Roscoe had noticed Bella's sadness. Every evening, as the ranch quieted down and the workers headed home, he would wander into the barn, drawn by the mare's loneliness. Tonight was no different. He trotted over to her stall, his tail wagging softly as he poked his nose through the wooden slats. "Hey there, Bella," Roscoe seemed to say with his expressive eyes. He let out a gentle whine, his way of offering comfort. Bella turned her head, her deep brown eyes meeting Roscoe's. There was a flicker of curiosity, a brief moment where her ears perked up before she returned to staring at the floor. Roscoe wasn't deterred. He sat down by the stall, his tail sweeping the hay as he settled in for the evening. For weeks, this routine continued. Roscoe would spend his nights by Bella's side, his presence a quiet reassurance. He didn't demand her attention or try to cheer her up with playful antics. He simply stayed, a steadfast companion in her solitude. One chilly autumn night, as the wind howled outside and the barn creaked under its force, Roscoe noticed something different. Bella was pacing in her stall, her injured leg making her movements stiff and uneven. She let out a low, distressed whinny, her agitation clear. Roscoe stood up, his ears pricking forward. He barked softly, a sound meant to calm her. But Bella continued her restless pacing. Sensing her distress, Roscoe squeezed through a gap in the stall door, ignoring the hay that clung to his fur as he entered her space. Bella paused, her large frame towering over the golden retriever. For a moment, it seemed as though she might reject his intrusion, but then something shifted. She lowered her head, her warm breath brushing against Roscoe's fur. The dog stood still, his tail wagging gently as he waited for her to make the next move. Slowly, Bella leaned closer, resting her muzzle against Roscoe's shoulder. The simple act spoke volumes, an unspoken acceptance of his presence, a silent acknowledgement of his unwavering support. Roscoe stayed perfectly still, his heart swelling with a sense of purpose. That night, the bond between the two deepened. Bella, who had once shied away from the company of others, found solace in Roscoe's companionship. And Roscoe, who had always been a cheerful and energetic dog, discovered a quiet strength within himself. The next morning, the ranch owner, Margaret Hayes, entered the barn to start her daily chores. Margaret was a kind-hearted woman in her 50s, with calloused hands, and a soft spot for every animal on the ranch. She stopped in her tracks when she saw Roscoe lying beside Bella, the two of them resting peacefully in the straw. "Well, would you look at that?" Margaret said softly, her voice tinged with amazement. She approached the stall carefully, not wanting to disturb the pair. "You've made yourself a friend, haven't you, Bella?" Bella lifted her head at the sound of Margaret's voice, her ears swiveling toward the woman. But she didn't move away from Roscoe, a sign that Margaret didn't miss. Over the following days, Margaret watched as Bella's demeanor began to change. The mare, who had once been withdrawn and despondent, started showing signs of life again. She nickered softly when Roscoe entered the barn, her ears perking up at the sound of his paws on the wooden floor. And Roscoe, ever the loyal companion, seemed to thrive in his role as Bella's guardian. But the most remarkable moment came one crisp morning when Margaret decided to take Bella out to the pasture for the first time in months. The mare had been hesitant to leave the safety of the barn, her injured leg making her wary of the uneven terrain. Margaret stood by her side, holding the lead rope and offering gentle encouragement, but Bella refused to move. Roscoe, who had been watching from the barn doors, suddenly darted forward. He ran up to Bella, barking softly as if urging her to follow. Bella hesitated, her hooves shifting nervously in the dirt. "Come on, girl," Margaret coaxed. "You've got Roscoe here to help you." Whether it was Margaret's words or Roscoe's persistence, something clicked. Bella took a tentative step forward, then another. Slowly but surely, she followed Roscoe out into the open air, her movements cautious but determined. As the morning sun bathed the ranch in a warm glow, Bella stepped into the pasture for the first time in months. Roscoe stayed by her side, his tail wagging proudly as he guided her across the grassy field. Margaret watched with tears in her eyes, her heart swelling with gratitude for the unlikely friendship that had brought her beloved mare back to life. What Margaret didn't realize was that this was only the beginning. The bond between Bella and Roscoe would grow stronger with each passing day, leading to a series of events that would touch the hearts of everyone at Meadowbrook Ranch and beyond. The days following Bella's triumphant step into the pasture marked a turning point for both the mare and Roscoe. Margaret couldn't help but marvel at the profound connection between the two animals. Each morning, as the ranch came alive with the sounds of rustling leaves and the gentle neighs of the other horses, Roscoe would be the first to trot into Bella's stall. His enthusiasm never waned, and Bella, who had once been hesitant to interact, now eagerly awaited his arrival, her ears perking up as soon as she heard his approaching footsteps. The ranch hands began to notice the change in Bella, too. Jacob, the young stable hand with a quick wit and an even quicker smile, was the first to comment. "She's like a new horse," he said one morning as he watched Bella and Roscoe walking side by side in the pasture. "It's like Roscoe gave her a reason to keep going." Margaret nodded, her heart swelling with pride. It's amazing what a little companionship can do. They've become inseparable. As the days turned into weeks, Bella's transformation became undeniable. Her coat, once dull and lackluster, began to regain its healthy sheen. Her movements, though still cautious, grew steadier with each passing day. But what stood out the most was her spirit. The mare, who had once been withdrawn and lifeless, now nickered softly to Roscoe, her eyes shining with a newfound vitality. The pair developed a routine that became the highlight of the ranch. In the mornings, Roscoe would guide Bella to the pasture, barking softly if she hesitated. Once there, they would roam the fields together, Roscoe darting through the tall grass while Bella grazed nearby. In the evenings, they would return to the barn, where Roscoe would curl up in the hay beside Bella's stall. Their bond was undeniable, a testament to the healing power of friendship. One afternoon, as Margaret worked on repairing a fence near the pasture, she noticed something unusual. Bella was standing at the edge of the field, her ears pricked forward and her gaze fixed on the horizon. Roscoe was by her side, his tail wagging as he barked softly, as though trying to encourage her. Curious, Margaret set down her tools and approached the pair. "What's got your attention, Bella?" she asked, patting the mare's neck. Bella let out a soft whinny, her head turning slightly toward Roscoe as if seeking reassurance. Margaret followed the mare's gaze and noticed a narrow path leading into the woods at the edge of the property. It was a trail that hadn't been used in years, overgrown with weeds and brambles. Roscoe barked again, his tone insistent. He nudged Bella's side with his nose as though urging her to move forward. Bella hesitated for a moment before taking a tentative step toward the trail. Margaret watched in awe as the mare, guided by Roscoe, began to walk down the path. "What are you two up to?" Margaret murmured, following closely behind. The trail wound through the woods, the canopy of leaves casting dappled shadows on the ground. Margaret was careful to keep pace with Bella, her heart pounding with a mix of curiosity and apprehension. Roscoe, ever the fearless leader, trotted ahead, occasionally glancing back to make sure Bella was following. After about 10 minutes, the trio emerged into a small clearing. Margaret gasped as her eyes fell on the scene before her. In the center of the clearing stood an old wooden well, its weathered beams covered in moss. The area was overgrown, but there was something enchanting about it, as though it held a story waiting to be uncovered. Bella stopped a few feet away from the well, her ears twitching as she let out a soft nicker. Roscoe ran ahead, sniffing around the base of the well before barking excitedly. Margaret approached cautiously, her boots crunching on the leaves and twigs beneath her feet. "What is it, boy?" she asked, kneeling beside Roscoe. The golden retriever pawed at the ground near the well, his actions deliberate and focused. Margaret's heart skipped a beat as she realized what he was doing. She grabbed a nearby stick and began to help, clearing away the dirt and debris. It didn't take long for Margaret to uncover a small rusted metal box buried at the base of the well. Her hands trembled as she lifted it, the weight of the box hinting at its contents. Bella watched intently, her head lowering to sniff the box as though she too was curious. Margaret opened the box, revealing its contents. A stack of faded photographs, a bundle of letters tied with a ribbon, and a small, intricately carved wooden figurine of a horse. She carefully removed the items, her eyes scanning the photographs. The images were of a young girl with long braids standing beside a horse that looked strikingly similar to Bella. In some of the photos, the girl was laughing, her arms wrapped around the horse's neck. Margaret's breath caught as she realized the significance of the discovery. "These must be from the family who lived here before us," she whispered, her voice filled with wonder. "Bella, is this why you brought us here?" The mare let out a soft whinny, her eyes meeting Margaret's. It was as though she understood the weight of the moment, her connection to the past intertwining with the present. Margaret carefully placed the items back in the box, her mind racing with questions. Who was the girl in the photos? What had become of her? And why had Bella led them to this hidden treasure? As the trio made their way back to the ranch, Margaret couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. Bella and Roscoe's bond had already brought so much light to her life, and now it seemed they were uncovering a piece of the ranch's history. What they had found in the clearing was more than just a box of memories. It was a reminder of the deep connections that could form between humans and animals, spanning generations. That night, as the sun set over Meadowbrook Ranch, Margaret sat in the barn with Bella and Roscoe by her side. The box rested on a bale of hay, its contents a testament to the love and loyalty that had always defined the ranch. "You two have done something incredible," Margaret said, her voice thick with emotion. "And I have a feeling this is only the beginning." Bella nickered softly, her head resting against Roscoe's shoulder. The golden retriever let out a contented sigh, his tail wagging as he curled up beside the mare. Together, they had not only healed each other, but also uncovered a story that would bring the ranch even closer together, a story that was far from over. The morning after discovering the hidden box, Margaret sat in her kitchen, staring at the photographs and letters spread out across the table. Steam curled up from her cup of coffee, but she was too engrossed to take a sip. Each photograph felt like a window into another time, a moment frozen in the lives of people who had once called Meadowbrook Ranch home. The young girl in the photos appeared over and over again, always with the same horse, Bella. Margaret's mind raced with possibilities. Could this really be Bella? Horses had long lifespans, but this would mean Bella was far older than Margaret had thought. And if it was her, what had brought her back to this ranch after all these years? Roscoe sat at her feet, his head resting on her knee, as if sensing her turmoil. Bella, as usual, stood just outside the kitchen window, her eyes fixed on Margaret. It was almost as though she was waiting, silently urging Margaret to uncover the truth. Margaret picked up the bundle of letters, the ribbon that bound them frayed and faded. She carefully untied it, unfolding the top letter. The handwriting was neat, but slightly shaky, as though written by someone young but full of emotion. "Dear Belle, I don't know if I'll ever see you again, but I want you to know you were my best friend. Mama says we have to leave the ranch, and I can't take you with me. It breaks my heart, but I promise I'll come back for you someday. Please don't forget me, love, Maddie." Margaret's heart ached as she read the words. Maddie had clearly loved Bella deeply, and the thought of being separated from her must have been devastating. Margaret glanced out the window at Bella, who stood quietly in the pasture, her head turned slightly as though listening. She read through the other letters, each one more poignant than the last. Maddie had written about her life after leaving the ranch, how she missed the open fields, the way Bella's coat shone in the sunlight, and the bond they had shared. The final letter, dated years after the others, was the most heartbreaking. "Dear Belle, I came back to the ranch today, but you were gone. The new owner said you had been sold after we left. I looked for you everywhere, but I couldn't find you. I hope you're happy wherever you are. I'll never stop loving you. Always, Maddie." Margaret set the letter down, tears welling in her eyes. Bella's refusal to let anyone near the old tree, her insistence on leading Margaret and Roscoe to the clearing, it all made sense now. Bella hadn't just been wandering aimlessly, she had been searching, waiting for someone to understand her story. "Roscoe," Margaret said softly, stroking the golden retriever's fur, "we have to find Maddie. She deserves to know Bella's still here." Roscoe barked in agreement, his tail wagging. Margaret felt a renewed sense of purpose. She would do everything in her power to reunite Maddie and Bella, no matter how long it took. The first step was tracking down the previous owners of the ranch. Margaret spent hours on the phone, speaking to local historians, digging through property records, and reaching out to anyone who might have known Maddie's family. The process was slow and often frustrating, but Margaret refused to give up. Finally, after weeks of searching, she found a lead. An older woman named Ruth, who had lived in Cedar Valley for decades, remembered Maddie and her family. "They moved to the city after selling the ranch," Ruth said over the phone. "Maddie was such a sweet girl, always talking about her horse. I think they ended up in Lexington, but that was years ago." Margaret thanked Ruth and began her search in Lexington. She reached out to community centers, libraries, and local social media groups, sharing what little information she had about Maddie and her family. Days turned into weeks, and just when Margaret began to lose hope, she received an email. Subject: "I think I know Maddie. Hi, Margaret. I saw your post about Maddie and her horse. I believe Maddie is my aunt. She's talked about a horse named Bella for as long as I can remember. She even has a picture of them together on her mantle. Please let me know how I can help. Best, Lila." Margaret's hands trembled as she read the message. She quickly replied, explaining the situation and asking if Lila could arrange for Maddie to visit the ranch. Lila's response was immediate and enthusiastic. Maddie had always wanted to return to Meadowbrook, and this was the perfect opportunity. A week later, Margaret stood at the ranch gate, her heart pounding, as a car pulled into the driveway. The door opened, and an older woman stepped out. Her hair was silver, but her eyes sparkled with the same youthful energy Margaret had seen in the photographs. It was Maddie. Roscoe barked excitedly, running to greet her. Maddie crouched down, laughing as she petted the golden retriever. "You must be Roscoe," she said, her voice warm. "Margaret told me all about you." Margaret approached, her heart swelling with emotion. "Maddie, it's so wonderful to meet you. There's someone here who's been waiting a long time to see you." Maddie's eyes filled with tears as Margaret led her to the pasture. Bella stood near the fence, her ears flicking forward as she caught sight of Maddie. For a moment, neither moved, as though time had stopped. "Bella?" Maddie whispered, her voice trembling. She stepped closer, her hand outstretched. Bella let out a soft nicker, her eyes locked on Maddie. Slowly she approached, nuzzling Maddie's hand with her nose. Maddie let out a sob, wrapping her arms around Bella's neck. "I thought I'd lost you forever," Maddie said, her tears soaking into Bella's mane. "I'm so sorry I left you." Margaret watched the scene unfold, tears streaming down her face. Roscoe stood beside her, his tail wagging as though he understood the significance of the moment. From that day forward, Maddie became a regular visitor at Meadowbrook Ranch. She and Bella picked up right where they had left off, their bond as strong as ever. Maddie shared stories of their adventures, and Margaret marveled at the life Bella had lived before coming to the ranch. Roscoe, of course, was always by their side, his role as Bella's companion more important than ever. The golden retriever had not only brought Bella out of her shell, but had also played a crucial role in reuniting her with Maddie. As the sun set over the ranch one evening, Margaret stood by the pasture, watching Maddie, Bella, and Roscoe together. She felt a profound sense of gratitude for the animals who had changed her life, for the stories they carried, and for the connections that bound them all. "This is what Meadowbrook is all about," she whispered to herself, a smile spreading across her face. Second chances, new beginnings, and the bonds that make life worth living. And as the stars began to twinkle in the night sky, Bella let out a soft whinny, as if to say she couldn't agree more.